Live from the nation's capital, you're in the war room. It is Thursday, the 10th of December, the year of our Lord 2020. There's actually a protest going on Capitol Hill just yards from where we are, and that is about a group of human rights activists, human rights groups have come together, people that support Falun Gong, people support the Uyghurs, people support the people in Hong Kong, underground house Christians, underground Catholics. And what are they doing? What's the commonality? It's the CCP. They are trying to get the White House, the president, the administration, to designate the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization. We'll have more of that in this hour. We got Miranda, Devine from the New York Post. We've got Jack Maxey, our co-host here, who's been out on assignment working through the analytics of the stealing of the election. And you've got, and he's now going to go back and focus on the, for today, the hard drive from hell, all types of news breaking about, that's been suppressed, quite frankly, about the Hunter Biden investigation. The big one in Politico, the story in Politico last night about Hunter Biden, the key to the story, the buried lead, was that this investigation deals with money laundering, deals with his CCP. It's not just about his taxes. It is not about his taxes. The taxes are the way they get into the investigation. This is about money laundering, and this is about his relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. But the even more buried lead than that is, guess what? The guy that we've been saying is really the brains of the operation in a group that doesn't have, a lot of three-digit IQs, is the brother James Biden, and he is under investigation for the hospital deal that Rudy Giuliani's been mocked and ridiculed about, the deal in Iraq, about that hospital situation. James Biden, according to Politico, is under investigation by the Western District of Pennsylvania. Guess where that is? That's Pittsburgh, which Rudy has talked about. They visited in December of 2019. Guess when? Guess what's interesting about that? That's just about the time that the FBI, Chris Wray and the team, got the hard drive from hell and sat on it. The hard drive from hell and sat on it. We're going to get into all that with Jack Maxey. Want to now go to the Gateway Pundit. Raheem's going to join us in a second. Gateway Pundit, a site that's on fire. Jim Hoff's been laboring ore on this thing for 14, 15 years now, over 140 million page views last month. Just doing incredible reporting. His brother Joe Hoff, for many years, knows the CCP as well as anybody, for many years, lived in my favorite city, Hong Kong. Joe Hoff now joins us. Joe, you're an analyst, you're a tech guy, you understand math. What I loved about your story that was a lead up on overnight, I think, for a while on Gateway Pundit, is that you're scratching your head and you're saying, this thing in Arizona stinks to high heaven. The math itself just doesn't even come close to working out. Walk us through your analysis and your piece. And the guys in Denver, after we show Joe, I want to get the piece from Gateway Pundit up there. And by the way, everybody should be going to Gateway Pundit. Everybody should be going to Citizens Free Press. Everybody should go Revolver, Populist Press, all of it. You've got so many alternatives to Drudge, just dump Drudge. It's not, and forget the fact that they hate Trump. It's just not even interesting, the news they put forward. It's all noise, not signal. Gateway Pundit is signal, not the noise. Joe, tell us about your analysis of Arizona.
Well, good morning, Steve. It's great to be back. Overnight, there was another video that was released, and it was from this individual by the name of Bobby Pitton. He was also interviewed when Rudy was in Arizona, and he gave an incredible presentation where he said, "I'd bet my life that these numbers are fraudulent," if you recall. And then he was taken off of Twitter. So he came out with another video this evening. We put it up this morning, actually, where he is pointing out the fact that if you go back to 1998 and look at the population and the votes from that period of time and can bring it forward to 2020, that there's actually more people that voted than there was an increase in population when compared to 1998. So that increase is around 1.7 million, and there was actually more people that voted in the state this time than when compared to 1998. So something doesn't make sense here. Again, there's so many anomalies. There's so much data that just absolutely doesn't make sense, not just with Arizona, but around the country. So pretty astonishing stuff.
Joe, as we get in, a part of the lawsuit that Texas, and by the way, they're going to have, I think, 10 to 12 of the state's attorney generals that have put in amicus briefs are going to be at the White House for a lunch and a meeting with the President of the United States. We understand from our sources a lot of discussion coming about some of these states actually going from amicus brief to actually joining the lawsuit, which will make it even more powerful and more difficult for the Supreme Court not to take it up. So, Joe, as you look around, and I'm going to get Raheem on here in a second about this YouTube, and you guys have had problems also. We're not questioning the fact that the authorities have come out and on the safe harbor, that they came out and said that. That's not the issue, right? We understand that, and even the Electoral College may meet next week. But it's the fact that now almost 50% of the American people are sitting there, and when you look at any polls, between 43 and 47, 48%, and the daily costing, I think, has got it at 49. Essentially, half the country is coming to the conclusion, as they just are looking at the math and look at some of these other aspects of this, that something's not right. And we got to take our time and get to the bottom of it, and it should be Biden's highest priority. At Gateway Pundit, you guys have done such an amazing job of doing this. What's your assessment of where we are right now on December 10th?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Steve. And I think a lot of people are, and this was part of the strategy from the left, discourage conservatives, make us feel like, we're all alone and that nobody's listening and that we're just, there's something wrong with our thinking because the rest of the world's moving on. And the facts are totally different. I talked to a buddy of mine the other day. He says, you guys keep kind of pushing this, and I like it. But one point that came out to me that somebody raised was the fact that in 2000, George Bush didn't receive a good ruling until he got to the Supreme Court. And so we haven't had any cases in front of the Supreme Court yet, really.
Yeah.
We've got this ruling a couple days ago from the Pennsylvania case, but my understanding is that case is still open.
Yeah.
And that might be ruled on by Alito any day. It could be he could come out with something today. So once we start seeing these go in front of the Supreme Court, there's a lot of hope that we're going to have some real justice. For example, I was looking at Arizona. A federal judge threw out a case there just like this morning that's being reported. I think it was yesterday. Well, it was another Obama judge.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do these Obama judges get all these cases? What's going on there? But because they keep, and then they're just horrible rulings. So we have to be patient and wait till it gets to the Supreme Court. I think there's still a lot of hope left, Steve.
Well, there's a lot of urgency now we had Eastman on, and you got Paxson. There's a lot of stuff going on. Today's a big day. You're arguing for the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. So, Joe, you and Jim are doing an amazing job. Just keep up the work. Gateway Pundit's becoming a leader in everything. So, just in particularly in this stopping the steal, it's just been incredible. So, thank you very much for joining us. Say hi to Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us on. Keep up the great work.
The brothers Hoft are on fire. I want to bring in Raheem Kassam now. Raheem, I want to walk through the polling numbers, and I want to talk about YouTube, and I talk about about what they're saying about what the warning that has to go up, which I don't have a problem with whatsoever. My problem is that in the warning is that it's the officials that haven't done their job here. So, Raheem, walk me through the polling though first, and particularly the Daily Kos online and these other polls that are showing now roughly 45, 43, 44, 45, 47, it's close to 50% of the nation thinks that this election had illegal and unfair activity going on.
Yeah, so this is a civics online survey for the Daily Kos, which is not a Trump-friendly website to say the least. This was 1,300 people using the civics methodology over the 5th to the 8th of December, so just a few days ago. They were asked a series of questions, the third one being, do you feel that the 2020 presidential election was conducted fairly? And 51% said they believe that, yes, it was conducted fairly. That is an extraordinarily low number for off the bat for how much people have faith in the U.S. presidential election process.
Raheem, hang on for a second. Daily Kos, correct me if I'm wrong. It's an online poll of Daily Kos, guys. That is like one of the beating hearts of the Orange Man Bad, opposition. Is it not, sir?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, the Daily Kos is about as far to the left as you can get in terms of the the left's online media presence. Now, I don't know, they're not entirely clear as to whether or not this was balanced as a thing between all voters or whether it's skewed towards the Daily Kos's audience. I would imagine it was the former. At least the pollster Civics would imply it's the former by having this methodology that they say, actually, we equally survey both sides. So let's go back to that. 51% of people, according to a left-wing website's own poll, and remember, polls nowadays are predominantly push polls, right? They get the results that they want to get by framing the question in a certain way, by asking lead-up questions. People are teased to give them certain answers. And yet this left-wing site only comes up with a number of 51% of 1,316 people surveyed. Then 34% say, no, the election was unfair to Republican voters and candidates. A further 4% say, no, the election was unfair to Democratic voters and candidates. And then a further 10% say, no, the election was unfair to both Democrats and Republicans.
Unbelievable.
So, and
Unbelievable.
2% say they
Stunning.
have no opinion or unsure.
Why is that not the screaming?
Yeah.
How can, by the way, when you look at these polls now, when you see the stories in the polls, you've got to go to the buried lead. The real headline is about 8 paragraphs down. That's where they all come to the same conclusion that essentially 50%, we're getting close to 50% of the American people know that the fix was in. And this is with the mainstream media suppressing it. So let's go now I want to go to the YouTube into what we know from YouTube. What's the latest?
Well, YouTube, as everybody knows from watching the show yesterday and watching the news and consuming on social media yesterday, YouTube made this announcement that they would start to remove shows from YouTube channels that allege that there was fraud in the election and that Donald Trump had won the election. And sought to clarify that yesterday, ringing around to conservatives effectively with YouTube channels and explaining the rules. So let me explain to you the way they've explained the rules to me. You may claim that Donald Trump has won. You may also claim that there was fraud at the election. You may not claim the two things together, which is absolutely ridiculous, because effectively what they're asking you to do is to claim that Donald Trump won without the fraud going on here, which is actually even faker news than they're alleging that would be spread otherwise. So that's their sort of where they stand. That's the rule, and they're not going to be banning accounts until January the 20th, at which point they will start banning accounts that say those two things in conjunction with each other. But what they're doing now is removing those videos. For instance, they removed yesterday morning's War Room show, and they will probably attempt at least to remove today's show. So here's the thing. They say the way around it, and they say the way that you can give context, wider context to your audience, is every time you claim that Trump won and that there was fraud, you also have to say official sources have called the race for Joe Biden. Now, interestingly, they didn't say how long you have to say that for, in what language you have to say it for, whether I can roll my eyes while I say it.
I have no problem with that because official sources have called it on the safe harbor. But this is also the fact.
Sure.
What did a year ago at this time, or excuse me, 4 years ago at this time, we're going to take a break. You guys stay over. We're going to cram all this in. 4 years ago this time, it's reported, what did I have in the transition when I was the chief strategist and Reince's co-head? What did I have people reading? The Best and the Brightest by David Halberstam. Why? Because it shows you what happens in a government. But it's the story of the Vietnam War and the story of the Kennedy and the Johnson administration, where the best guys from Harvard and all these Ivy League schools deluded themselves and then tried to sell a lie to the American people, the official lie. What happened? This great reporting on the Afghan report, the Afghanistan war. What was I fighting in the summer of 2017? The lies of basically the Pentagon and the government and the national security apparatus about Afghanistan, which now all come to light through the Washington Post. That was all the official party line, and they were all lies. We're going to return in a moment and drill down on this with Raheem Kassam, War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Maggie, Nancy Pelosi is out with a new analysis. Tell us what she's saying.
Nancy Pelosi is holding a press conference right now, and there's now this graphic circulating the internet where she has a poster board next to her at her press conference, which reads, Total World War II American combat deaths, 291,557. Total American COVID deaths as of today, 290,000.
Raheem Kassam, I want to go back to you, and I just want to cite some things. The Pearl Harbor, the Kennedy assassination, the Vietnam War, right prior to the Pentagon Papers, which didn't come out to the 70s, the attack on 9/11, and the financial crisis, all of which had official reports, all of which we know the official reports had, from the Warren Commission to the 7 reports done on Pearl Harbor, that we all know had major either outright lies or major misinformation that was put out there to be misinformation by the most pristine of government sources. So, yes, did officially that all the states on safe harbor, and guess what? Nobody cared. And here's why nobody cared. We haven't gotten to the bottom of this. And YouTube's got to understand something. We don't mind putting up a declaration. That's what the official guys say. My problem is that the 5 of the states are being sued are Republican administrations. What my problem is that today in the House, they're finally in Georgia, having testimony, Rudy Giuliani, the Secretary of State, a Republican, voted in by Republicans with Republican donor money, refuses to testify. But they have to understand we're going all in on showing what the facts are. Just like we now know the Warren Commission is nothing but a bunch of lies because of it. It's not me saying it. It's a House investigative committee, I think 10 years later, that came out and said it was fraught with lies and misrepresentations. Just like the Afghan, go to everything about Vietnam. Go to the Afghan. The Washington Post did that Afghan report, about a year ago, that was pure crickets. It talked about the national security apparatus and the Pentagon lying consistently about Afghanistan. And who said that in the summer of 2017? Stephen K. Bannon, to their face. I said, you're lying. You're lying to the president. This is all lies. You just continue on what you want to do in Afghanistan. And 4 years later, we understand it was all lies. It was all lies, misrepresentations, right? About how much money, what we were doing, how successful it was. The Washington Post reported that. Is this what we're supposed to do now? Say the official response. Okay, the official response is the following. I got to have no problem with that. And guess what? The official response has to be questioned. Why did I hand out the best and the brightest? Halberstam won the Pulitzer Prize. That's what became known. Why he spent, I think, 6 years of his life finding out how all the superstars in Camelot, in the Kennedy administration, and then the Johnson administration, although many of them well-intentioned, spun a network and series of lies, right? Led by McNamara, who was actually a good man, and then later on in Errol Morris's film film came clean with the fact that he had been a proponent and pushed forward misinformation that kept us in there. It's the beginning of the film American Dharma, which my film, the film Morris made about me. And when I walk through exactly about this and about in my life, my grade school football coach's son killed in Vietnam. Why? For a tissue of lies, not questioning the combat heroism and valor of American fighting men and women in Afghanistan and Vietnam. That goes beyond. You can't question that. Unbelievable. But the official story of why they were there and how successful it was being, that's the tissue of lies, and we're going to question that every day. And guess what? YouTube's got to get the fact. You're going to be on the wrong side of history here because there was theft and there was election administration. You can see that in Wisconsin today. So, Raheem, walk me through. You're my guru in this. What should we do here?
Look, I'll simplify it a little more than that. Not that your point wasn't simple. The same people who were telling you that Hunter Biden did nothing wrong, that everything was fake, are the same people telling you that there's no fraud at this election. That's all you need to know. And by the way, take that to your skeptical friends. Take that to your skeptical family members, your skeptical colleagues. And go, hold on a minute. Remember right before the election, they told us nothing to see here with Hunter Biden. Now suddenly, Politico, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. Oh, yeah, well, actually, Hunter Biden has some questions to answer for.
No.
Right.
No. Hang on. It's deeper than that. We now know that they've been investigating him, and they covered that up. This is what's so blatant about it. And I'm going to get Jack Maxey on here for a second, who's another American hero. We're taken down from Twitter for one reason. It's not about the heads on pike. That was a term of arts. It's a figure of speech. And they know that. We talked about St. Thomas More and the whole thing. That's a figure of speech. The reason it came down is because Jack Maxey was putting up the receipts from the hard drive from hell of Hunter Biden. Of guess what? That was being investigated, we now know, by federal authorities. This is the scam. Listen, the American people are a courageous and decent and hardworking people, and they're not going. We came out of a revolutionary movement to break off from the greatest empire in the world. We were the first to really step up to colonialism. The third of the patriots that stood up against the Tories and the people in the middle. We're not a nation that backs down. Nancy Pelosi today brings up with 290,000 combat casualties, another 100,000 that died, 400,000, right? Why? And being attacked by Pearl Harbor and then the Germans declaring war on us, fighting on foreign battlefields. One of the great prides I've had as a veteran, as a naval officer, to go throughout the world from the Philippines all over the world and then traveling as a businessman later in Europe and going to these military cemeteries. How many other nations on earth have military cemeteries all over the world that have their dead buried there? The most sacred ground in America is in foreign battlefields of the kids that never came home. You go to that cemetery at Normandy, on that overlooking that, right? In those white crosses, you understand what this nation's for. We're not going to back down. We're not going to. You think YouTube Jack Dorsey or the guys at Google, Sergey and the other guys, and Schmidt and these guys? We're not going to back down an inch. We're not going to back down an inch. We're holding the line. We're not backing down an inch. And here's what you got to understand: the American people are coming our way. The American people are coming our way. Do you think it's random they're now getting ready to throw Joe Biden under the bus? Trust me, they're going to throw Joe Biden under the bus so quickly because they understand the fix was in. Was it Tariq said the finesse? So, brother Raheem Kassam, that was a beautiful point on Biden. Let me bring in. You hang right there. I got to bring in Jack Maxey. Jack. Go ahead, Raheem.
No, I just want to conclude on this real quick.
Yeah.
So you can understand, look, you all know from human history, as you say, that the official version of events, right, very Orwellian way of putting it, by the way, the official version of events is rarely ever correct, i.e., and what I mean by that is to say 100% correct. It may be 90, it may be 80, sometimes it's 0, and we know that for a fact. But there's another thing that we're just breaking on the national pulse right now. Go and look at who YouTube employs as their software engineers. Oh, is it people who have worked for the People's Liberation Army? You would be correct if you guessed that.
Hey, just saying. Just saying. The CCP thing stinks to high heaven. I've been talking about this for years. And now all of a sudden these big reveals coming out. It's all interconnected. Look, there's no conspiracies. There's not. It's all up in your face. This is the way the system works. In the party at Davos, that phrase, I used that in a film I made in the spring of 2009. On the financial crisis, Generation Zero. And there's a segment in there with Peter Schweitzer that I filmed over at the Young Americans Foundation with Roger Robinson, those guys, on a Saturday afternoon. And it was the Party at Davos section. In the Party at Davos, the economic engine that drives that is the slave labor of Lao Beijing in China. We talked about that, 11 years ago, okay? We've been on this, and now you're seeing it, and it stinks to high heaven. And we're not going to back off that. If YouTube and Twitter and these guys, we're not going to back off it. And Jack Dorsey, we're on the side of the angels, and here's why. We've got the receipts. Raheem, hang on there for a second. Jack, Maxey, I want to bring you in here, and I want to talk about. We got about 2 minutes. I want you to walk through your summary of the hard drive from hell. What have you been saying for months? Our next guest is going to be Miranda, Devine, but I want you to go through what you pushed out that turned out to be fact.
Well, for example, Steve, we had they started this Bohai Harvest relationship back in 2013, right? This would be Hunter Biden, Jimmy Bulger, and Devin Archer. For example, if the SEC is listening, these guys sold this fund as something that they were co-investors in. This is an absolute lie. They were given money by the GP to turn around to make it look like they were investors. This Bohai Harvest is in most of the big banks on Wall Street. It's a complete scam. The entire corporation was set up to use people like Hunter Biden to gain access so that they could purchase strategic assets around the world.
But hang on. The GP, though, don't bury the lead. The GP was the CCP, right? That GP money came from CCP-controlled countries.
The GP is the China. 100%, Steve. And the whole corporation was set up so that they could get strategic assets. A classic one was his automotive that they purchased in 2015 that was signed off by all of our security apparatus. Now, this company not only makes car parts, but it makes the dampening systems for everything from the F-35 to the M1 Abrams tank, as well as the Buick Super Clyde. So this is a very important strategic company, and in the same period of time, they tried to buy 3 European companies from our allies, and all of their defense, national security apparatus.
Jack, I want you to hang on for the Miranda Devine. We're going to bring Miranda Devine in after the commercial break from the New York Post. I want you to hang on because we're going to come back to you to go through the hard drive. It was Jack Maxey that broke this. Okay, it was his detailed analysis going to that hard drive that broke it. Raheem Kassam, thank you very much. We're going to talk about the National Pulse 3 o'clock show a little later, Raheem Kassam. And let's make sure we put our official, whatever it is. Officially, yes, December 8th was Safe Harbor. And guess what? Nobody cares, okay? Because they're in Wisconsin, they're in Georgia, we're in the Supreme Court. We're all over the place showing the receipts. Be back in a moment with Miranda Devine from the New York Post.
Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We've got breaking news out of Arizona. Fog City Midge, what's happening?
Apparently, the Arizona Senate Judiciary Committee is going to hold a virtual hearing, tomorrow with subpoena power to hear testimony and to view evidence.
Subpoena power to review evidence. I think they want to see some receipts, YouTube. Okay? Remember, officially on a safe harbor, Ducey and these guys and the Secretary of State signed off. Now the legislature is getting involved. That legislature also threw in and wrote an amicus brief on the lawsuit from Texas. Okay, we're now honored to be joined by one of the top, not just columnists, but really not opinion writers. I think she's an analyst, does analytical work in looking through today's news. Her name's Miranda Devine from the New York Post. At 5 a.m. on the 14th of October of this year, she posted a column. Voters have a right to know what Joe Biden did for his son, Hunter. She was attacked and ridiculed by the mainstream media. That article that basically assessed the news story that the New York Post was breaking that day and the day before really set the framework for how one should really look at the investigation into Hunter Biden. And now we know because our betters in the mainstream media tell us that federal investigations, and by the way, the lies that Hunter Biden's already spent, it's not about his taxes. That's how they get into this. It's about money laundering. It's about his relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. And the buried lead of buried leads is that James Biden, the brother, the brains of the operation, is being investigated for the Iraq hospital deal by the U.S. Attorney in Pittsburgh. And now I want to bring in Miranda Devine from the New York Post. Miranda, thank you so much for joining us on War Room.
Good morning, Steve.
Miranda, tell people.
Interesting, isn't it? That it's all come out.
Well, I want to go back in time, though. We're not going to let people off the hook on this thing. You came out and wrote this piece that was amazing. And quite frankly, every word of it has been shown to be true. At the time, you were ostracized, attacked, that this is crazy New York Post, this is tabloid journalism. These people are all partisan hacks that have access to grind. Walk us through what happened. And you really set the framework, the analytical framework of how this has to be viewed at the time. And you said, hey, guess what? I think voters have a right to actually know the facts here. So walk through what happened back in October.
Well, that was October 14. That was the morning that we broke the Hunter Biden laptop story at 5 a.m., as you say. Our front page story and my accompanying column were published. And immediately, that was just poo-pooed by the rest of the media. And then we had Facebook announced that they were throttling our story a few hours later. And then Twitter basically locked our account for the next 2 weeks. So we've seen recently, thanks to Project Veritas, that CNN in their news conferences were saying we're not going to run this because the New York Post has no credibility and this story has already been debunked. And of course, it hadn't been. What we had published that morning was brand new evidence which put the lie to Joe Biden's repeated over several years denials that he knew about his son Hunter's business dealings overseas, including in China, where Joe Biden, as vice president in 2013, took Hunter, his druggy, wayward son, to China for a 2-week visit on Air Force Two, where he was introduced to a lot of bigwigs in China who were more than interested in ingratiating themselves with the vice president's son. And he walked out of there with a $1.5 billion deal with a subsidiary of a Chinese bank, whereas Joe Biden came away empty-handed on behalf of the United States because he'd ostensibly gone to China to try and get the Chinese to stop stealing America's intellectual property, to stop militarizing the South China Sea islands that are so threatening to America's allies in that part of the world, including Australia. And China just went on merrily doing what they wanted. And the only price they had to pay was a few deals for Hunter Biden.
I want to also go back in the time. By the way, the reporting of Emma Jo Morris and the team at the New York Post and the reporting and analysis of Miranda Devine, every comma, every period, every word is actually true. It has never been proven one iota wrong, and now we know federal investigators are reviewing the material and doing formal investigations. More importantly, I got to go back to this, Miranda. You were actually, the New York Post and you and Emma Jo Morris and the team were accused of being dupes for a Russian misinformation campaign. How do you respond to that?
Well, I mean, it's just insulting and it's laughable, but it came from, I think there were 50 former intelligence operatives signed a letter saying that it was Russian disinformation. You had James Clapper, of course, CNN contributor, paid, saying that this had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. I mean, you know, Emma Jo Morris had spent more than a week investigating that. Then we had an entire team on the laptop. We had the hard drive, which Rudy Giuliani's lawyer gave us several days before we published. I mean, the due diligence on that was immense, and we were comfortable and confident that every word we published was correct and accurate and verifiable. And there was a lot of other stuff that we hadn't yet published because we were still in the process of checking it out. I mean, it is a treasure trove, that laptop. And the FBI, as you say, have had it since last year when the Mac Shop repair guy who came to own it after Hunter Biden fecklessly abandoned his laptop there, he'd given it to the FBI. And in fact, we knew before the election, James Rosen from Sinclair Broadcasting got the scoop that the Department of Justice confirmed that they were, in fact, investigating Hunter Biden's laptop and Hunter Biden and his family for money laundering. And that was 4 days before the election, completely ignored by the media, which just swallowed willfully Joe Biden's aggressive denials that he knew anything about his son's business.
These were not done. These are stone cold lies, and I hope YouTube puts up stone cold lies. I want to go into something. I was part of that team that approached the New York Post, and here's why. Rupert Murdoch, one of the most sophisticated, don't like him, like his politics, don't like him, one of the most sophisticated media executives and owners in the world, and in probably modern media history. I believe he has publicly traded market caps of different companies of $60-70 billion. He's a fiduciary. His team of technology people, his team of lawyers, his team of reporters led by Emma Jo Morris, his chief columnist Miranda Devine, these are people beyond repute with a history of breaking news of serious stories. It's a paper founded by Alexander Hamilton, I think in 1802 or 1805. It's the oldest continuously published paper, I believe, in the nation, one of the most prestigious papers and one of the largest papers. And it was vilified and attacked by lies, outright lies from the national security apparatus and from their cohorts in the mainstream media. I want to go up today, though. Your piece that's this morning, the reason we wanted to have you on, was the Biden family has put the national security of the United States of America at risk. And Miranda Devine, in her dispassionate way, walks you through why this is a major issue. Let's leave aside for the fact about this, all the issues about stealing this election, about who actually won. This is a point that we have made now for months and months and months, even for the hard drive. But it's been brought up in the New York Post reporting, Miranda Devine's analysis, and now she lays it out, that the Biden family is a national security risk to the United States of America, her citizens, and free people throughout the world. Miranda, walk through your assessment.
Well, there's an influence peddling operation that's been run by the Bidens overseas for many years, and they've capitalized on Joe Biden's position as vice president and now, to be president. And it's so blatantly obvious. I mean, it's not just the emails that we've published from Hunter's laptop. It's also the testimony of a very credible man, Tony Bobulinski, who was the former partner of Hunter Biden. And he's spoken a lot about Joe Biden's involvement. I mean, it's not just that Joe Biden's son and brother have been trading off his name. It is that by the testimony of Bobulinski and also by emails that we've published, Joe Biden was aware and involved in this family business. And that is a real concern because as the two Senate committees with their incredible bombshell report that was published just on Tuesday and may have precipitated the this sort of confession by the Bidens that Hunter was under investigation, that bombshell report from Ron Johnson and the Republicans who lead those committees, that tells us that there is serious threats of extortion and blackmail and criminal conspiracies involved in all the evidence that they've amassed about the Biden family businesses. Now, if that isn't a national security risk at a time when China is our primary national security threat, as DNI Radcliffe said the other day. There's no doubt about it. All the intelligence agencies know this. And yet you have a man who is potentially walking into the White House next month as the president, who is compromised. As Tony Bobulinski said, he has been compromised by communist China. That is really dangerous. And it's that this story, probably the biggest story in American political history in the last 50 years, is being ignored and played down by the rest of the media. I do not understand it unless they're either willfully ignorant and naive, or they are so in cahoots with the Democratic Party that they will overlook anything. And maybe they're setting up Joe Biden to be knocked off so that Kamala Harris can become president as soon as possible.
Miranda, we got about a minute left. In your professional opinion, having been someone that's had this beat for many, many years, do you believe a special prosecutor should immediately be put on top of this Biden family situation?
Of course. I mean, that is the only way that you're going to be able to safeguard America's national interests. There has to be a dispassionate prosecutor with special powers to be able to investigate every part of all the Biden family's goings-on overseas, with the ability to subpoena records and look at, phone messages and so on. And, a material witness there is Tony Bobulinski, and he has everything all recorded in WhatsApp messages and text messages and emails and documents that he's happy to hand over. So we need to get to the bottom, particularly, there's problems in Ukraine and Kazakhstan and Moscow, but China is the money shot. That is where America's national security interests lie.
Miranda, we've got about 15 seconds. How do people follow you during the day? What's your social media contact points?
At Miranda Devine and on Parler, Miranda Devine and Facebook, and of course at the New York Post.
Amazing reporting for Emma Jo Morris, the team over the New York Post, yourself, and for all the grief you got. You're right. This is a story, and it's at the top of the first inning, the investigation of it and your coverage of it. Miranda Devine from the New York Post, thank you so much for joining us in the War Room.
Thanks, Steve.
That's heroism. It'd be very easy for her in the New York Post to roll over. They refuse to back down an inch. We're going to return in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Maggie, we have more breaking news.
Well, Rasmussen tweeted some poll stats. They did a poll that found 47% of Americans, mostly Republicans, believe the election was stolen. But this is the breakdown on this is they say Republicans.
47% of all American people.
47% of all voters.
Okay, all voters.
And that breakdown goes this way: 75% of Republicans, 39% unaffiliated,
wow.
and Democrats, they say 20 to 30% very likely.
Good Lord. That's Democrats listen to the War Room. Folks, I've been telling you this number. The range is 43 to 47%. Rasmussen's just confirmed it. There's polling that shows that even maybe higher than that. It's roughly 50% of the country. Okay? And this is with suppression, information suppression by the mainstream media. They keep saying baseless. It may be a lot of things, mainstream media, and I don't know why YouTube's not taking down CNN because of this. It may be a lot of things. One thing it ain't is baseless. At the end of the day, we may get to the fact that the evidence doesn't stand up. We have an advocacy system. Let's get into court. Let's get into testimony. Let's have Democrats. They didn't do a very good job in Michigan, right? In fact, I think one of the Democratic legislatures, in fact, I think one of the people that were up on, they profiled on Saturday Night Live in the parody, I think it may be her. I may be wrong. I think there's some controversy now about that. But I say let Democratic legislatures go at it full. This evidence has got to stand up. If it doesn't stand up, then guess what? It didn't turn out to be evidence. But it's certainly not baseless. There's not baseless. May end up not standing up. You're in Wisconsin today. You're in Georgia in a hearing. You just heard they're going to have a hearing tomorrow in Arizona with subpoena power by the Judiciary Committee, right? You're going to get to somehow the Supreme Court's going to get the papers from the people being sued, the states being sued. It's all in process, right? There's other massive suit dropped this morning with the lawyers for the president, Smith and Cleta Mitchell, right? One of my lawyers. She's one of the best conservative lawyers out there for all the not-for-profits and everything. She's a legend. She's part of that. That lawsuit's got 453,000 votes. That's why we played that mantra all the time by Smith. And if you want to see this, Raheem summed it up. You want to see the lie, go back and look at the Hunter Biden thing. Now we're seeing these stories. Oh, yeah, there is actually an investigation going on, a federal investigation. Well, why did you say it was a Russian disinformation campaign in October? That was a lie. YouTube, you should go back and put that up on the thing. That's a lie. Twitter, you let these people lie. You let Brennan, these guys get up there. And these are bald-faced lies. It was not a Russian disinformation situation. That hard drive is bulletproof. Jack Maxey's gone through a chapter and verse. Jack Maxey, the reason our Twitter feed is down is because Jack Maxey put the receipts up. What did he put up? Hunter Biden's phone conversation where he's talking about in business with the chief of spies, Patrick Ho, of the CCP. And Jack Maxey showing the wire transfers of the millions of dollars. Jack Maxey showing the signed term sheets, the signed engagement letters, of which they've never refuted one fact that was ever put up. They didn't have to. They had the Praetorian Guard. Now you're in a jam. Not only do half the American people think that the election was stolen or there's something untoward going on, and this is going to be a scar that ain't going to heal, ladies and gentlemen, until it's fully vetted. Now you've got the fact that the guy himself and his family himself is probably going to have a special prosecutor. Miranda Devine, who's as serious as they get, she just said the quiet part out loud. President Harris. The quiet part out loud. Okay? You think we got a constitutional crisis now? Ladies and gentlemen, you ain't seen nothing yet. That's what we keep saying. Why do you think we're doing this 2 times a day with our partners at Real America's Voice? Why are they on this nonstop? Fox can look the other way. That's fine. That's a decision. We're not. No, we're holding the line because history demands that we hold the line. The 290,000 from their patriot graves demand we hold the line. Nancy Pelosi's got it up on her chart. Hey, guess what? In the 290,000 that were killed by the Chinese Communist Party, because that's who killed them. That's where the virus is. CCP. First, they killed the Chinese people. They didn't care about what happened around Wuhan. They didn't care what happened around Hubei province. And then it spread, and they exacerbated it, and we know they exacerbated it. Talk to Dr. Yan. Talk to the Chinese at the front line. I want to bring back in Jack Maxey. Jack, we got a couple of minutes. You're another hero. You put it up there, got full grief. You didn't care. You honey badgered. Just like you're doing the stats now. When Jack Maxey drills down, good things happen. And he drilled down on that hard drive and went through and came up chapter and verse. Give me a highlight reel, Jack.
Well, we talked about Bohai Harvest being a front operation. That started to fall apart. We know that because of their annual meeting notes, secret notes, where they basically get called out by Germany and Sweden as a front operation for Chinese Communist intelligence. So the private equity future is sort of limited. So then Hunter decides to set up something called Hudson West, which is an LLC that was in partnership with the Chinese Communist oil company, CEFC, Patrick Ho, Jonathan Yi. And the idea was that Hunter and his uncle were going to be the front men to purchase strategic assets in the oil and gas sector in the United States. And when you talk about Bobulinski and his idea of plausible deniability, they used an actual law firm from Biloxi, Mississippi, named Harry and Thrash. And when they talk about the plausible deniability, they actually were forced to set up a secret meeting in Atlanta in September of 2017. We have all the receipts. James Biden was there. Hunter Biden was there. The Ritz-Carlton. This was so that nobody knew what was going on. During this period of time, Hunter was getting hundreds of thousands of dollars a month directly deposited into one of his LLCs called Owasco, and also put into one of his uncle's LLCs called Lion Hall in Delaware. So this starts to fall apart. Jonathan Yi disappears. We think he's sleeping with the fishes. Same with Patrick Ho. Hunter is panicking. And in cooperation with a woman named Jiaqui Bao, Hunter takes the $4.5 million that is left in this account by Patrick Ho, and we actually have the wire transfers from Cathay Bank. This is in the fall of 2018 when he knows that things are falling apart.
We're going to jump back on this this afternoon. We didn't have time to go to the protest.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. I know.
Like one crime after
I got
another.
it. Jack Maxey will get into the weeds on you in a second. It's a great job. Okay, there's actually the protest to
All right, guys.
designate the Chinese Communist Party as a transnational criminal organization. We're going to report on all that. We're going to be live in Bethpage. We're going to be talking to people at the protest. We're going to have Jack Maxey back on the hard drive from hell, exposing the Chinese Communist Party and how they're in back of all this. It ain't a conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, no conspiracies, but there are also no coincidences. At 5 o'clock today, we'll be back with the team. See you then.